All right, so here's the next section where we're going to do some basics of graphing polynomial functions. Okay, so when we do this, we're going to be looking at the degree of the polynomial, so that would be the highest power. And we're going to be looking at the leading coefficient. So remember, the leading coefficient is the number in front. We're determining whether or not it's positive or if it's negative. And then multiplicity, we're going to probably do a little bit later and a couple other examples. So multiplicity is basically how many times that x-intercept exists. So if you got x equals 2, and then you got it again, x equals 2, this would have a multiplicity of 2 because it occurs 2 times. Or if you got it again, x equals 2, this would have a multiplicity of 3 because that x-intercept happens 3 times. All right, so here we go. So this obviously is an even function because the highest power or the degree is 2. And let's just real quick factor this. So remember, we want what multiplies to 3 but adds or subtracts to 2. So we know it factored, and you could do the box, but we know the only factors of 3 are 1 and 3. And since it's a positive 2, we know the 3 has to be a positive and the 1 has to be negative. So this is the same function, just factored. And this still has a even power because there's an x here and an x here, so it causes this still to be an x squared. All right, so we know from in behavior that anything that has an even degree is going to have an end behavior going the same direction. So it's either going to go both up or it's going to go both down. Since the leading coefficient is positive, we know that they're both going to go up. So we're just going to draw a rough sketch. We know since it's positive, it's going to go up. And then we have our x-intercepts are at x minus 1. So we know at x equals 1, there's an x-intercept. And we know at x equals negative 3, there's an x-intercept. So we're going to go ahead and plot those points, 1 and negative 3. And we don't know much else, but that is enough to give us a graph. So we're going to go ahead and we know that it's going to start here. We have to go through here, got to go back up and around. So something like that. Like I said, it's just a quick rough sketch. All right, let's kick it up a notch to have higher powers. All right, so this still has an even degree because this has a degree of 4. So this is still even. And I want you to realize this has a degree of 4 as well. So we have an x, we have this x, this one, and this one. So if we multiply them all together, we have x times this x times that x times that x. So we still have x to the 4th. Okay, so it's still an even. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is our leading coefficient. Our leading coefficient on both of these is positive because there's not a negative sign there. So once again, we know they're both going to have a positive end behavior. And since they're even, they're both going to go in the same direction. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to erase this real quick. Let's go ahead and state all of our x-intercepts based on that. So since this one does not have a number, see how this one has a 4 at the end? So we know x is going to be negative 4. It's the opposite. X is going to be at 2, and x is going to be at positive 4. Since this one doesn't have a number at the end, x is going to be 0. So that's where we're going to plot all of our points. So 0 at negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, at positive 2, and at positive 4. So you just put your dots. All right, so since all of these have degrees of 1, that means we're going to cross, and we'll talk about bounce in a second. So I'm just going to always start from the right side, and we're going to go down. We got to go through here. We know at some point we've got to come back through, got to come back and end over there. So something like that. It's not perfect, but it's just a basic rough sketch. All right, one more of even degrees, and then we'll talk about the odd ones. All right, so still this has an even degree of 6. This one also is because this is 3, then this is 4, 5, 6. So this still has a degree of 6 if we multiply all these x's together. All right, so The only difference now is our leading coefficient is negative. So since we have an even degree and it has a negative leading coefficient, we know that it's going to go down, and even means they're going to go in the same direction, so they're both going to go down. All right, now we are going to have an x-intercept at +4, at 1, at -2, and once again, this is going to be 0 because there's not a number inside. But this one has a multiplicity of 3. And since it's multiplicity of 3, we know that it's still going to cross. So if it occurs odd number of times, they're still going to cross the x-axis. All right, so we're going to put it at 0, -2, +1, and +4. 2, 3, 4. All right, so I always start from the right. We know it's going to go up, has to go through here, go back down. And one thing about the third is it usually has like a little squiggly here. I don't want you to have to worry about that so much, but just realize that it's going to actually go through to the other side. And usually when it has x to the third, it has a little squiggly, but it's just a rough sketch. You don't have to worry about that so much. All right, last but not least, now we're going to talk about odd functions. So when the degree is odd. So here you'll see this has a degree of 3, which we know is odd. And this as well has a degree 3 because there's an x here, here, and here. So this is x to the third as well. All right, so if it has an odd power or degree, that means they're going to go in opposite direction. Okay, so the first thing I always do is, it's still a positive leading coefficient. They both have a positive one there. So since it is positive, we know that it's going to be in a positive right side. And then since it's odd, they're going to be opposite directions. So the end is going to be over here. Okay, so the right is positive because it's positive, and then the other one is on the other side. All right, now we're going to find our x-intercepts. So we're going to have one at x equals -2, x equals 1, and x equals +2. So we're going to go to -2, +1, and +2. And we're going to just draw our graph. I always start from the right. We know it's going to go through, come back, go through, come back, and go down. Something like that. All right, let's go ahead and do one that has multiplicity now, an even power. Okay, because that's when we're going to have these bounces. So I'll talk about that in a second. All right, well, once again, we still have a odd degree. This is still odd. So that means they're going to be in opposite directions. So this is 2, 3, 4, 5. So you got to add those ones. So this one has 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is still x to the 5th. All right. And we know it is a positive leading coefficient because there's a +1 in front of there. So we know it's going to start on the right side going positive, and they're going to be opposite directions because it's odd. So it's going to end over there. All right, so we're going to have an x-intercept here at 0 because there's not a number in like this, and at -2, and at +4. But here's the kicker. This one has an even power attached to it. So that means it's going to bounce at that spot. This as well has an even power, so this is going to bounce. Where this one has a power of 1 on it, so this one's going to cross. And we'll get to more of this later. All right, so we're going to go at 0. We're going to go at -2 and 4. All right, and we're just going to go here, and we know I like to write on there too because sometimes I forget. So we know at 4, it's going to bounce. At 0, it's going to bounce. And then at -2, it's going to cross. So here's what that looks like. We're going to go down. We're going to touch. We're going to cross it at 4, but we're going to bounce up. We're not going to cross it. We're going to bounce up. We're going to go here. We're going to bounce again, and then we'll cross.